All right. I think that's everybody. So good morning. Thank you for joining Volpara's Q4 FY22 update call. Joining us today is Group CEO Ralph Hinem, Jill Spear, Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Chief Financial Officer Craig Hadfield, and Terry Thomas, Strategic Advisor. Before I hand over this morning, please be advised that you're all in listen-only mode. Today's event will include a quick presentation followed by a Q&A. To ask a question, you can either type it into the Q&A panel or press raise hand to speak. I would also like to remind you that today's call is being recorded. So I'll now hand over to Group CEO Ralph Hinem.
Thanks, Lauren. Hello, and thank you for taking the time this morning to hear about our busy and commercially strong Q4 FY 2022, which ended the 31st of March 2022. Volpara is on a mission to save families from cancer by providing an integrated software platform for the delivery of personalised breast care. We're proud that our software is now contracted to be used in over 35% of US breast cancer screenings. That software is helping ensure that patient experience is personalised, safe, comfortable and effective, with cancers being caught as early as possible. We're making a major impact on thousands of lives each and every day. Now, as per the ASX announcement that went out earlier today, we're very pleased with how Q4 has landed, despite the continuing disruption from COVID and ever-increasing security requirements in our space. And today we're going to cover the traditional 4C cash numbers, which show record cash receipts and very close to our first $8 million quarter. The SaaS-based metrics showing solid growth over the quarter, and operational and strategic news. As Lauren said, I'm joined today by Craig, our CFO, based here in Wellington, our EVP Sales and Marketing for the US, Jill, based over in South Carolina, and Terry Thomas, a long-term strategic advisor to the company based in New Zealand, but a veteran of the US electronic health record market. Questions can be raised at the end to any of us, either by raising the hand or by entering the chat, as Lauren indicated. Okay, I'm not sure, Lauren, if you can bring up the PowerPoint I thought we'd prepared, or Craig, if you want to do that, but there you go, cool. All right, let's review then the 4C cash metrics posted up earlier this morning onto the ASX. I'd like to say that during Q4, we had our strongest quarter ever for cash receipts from customers, with receipts of about $8 million, up 50% compared to last year. With those cash receipts almost being all from subscription sales. I'd like to go on record and thank our CFO, Craig, and his team for their diligent work in collecting those receipts, not just in this quarter, but throughout the year, where we ended up collecting $28.5 million of cash receipts over the year, up 45% compared to the previous year. During the quarter, we had net operating and investing cash outflow of $2.9 million, down 20% from Q3, as we continue to see cost synergies come into play post the various acquisitions that we've done. Optimizing the productivity in the card company has been a feature of the last year as we look to become ever more scalable. That will continue to be an even bigger focus of the company over FY23, as we look to leverage the team, products and partnerships we have to move more aggressively towards cash flow break even. Cash on hand in Q4 was a little over $18 million, leaving us with continuing strong bank balance and approximately 7 quarters on cash on hand at our current run rate, and that includes any earn-out considerations. The company continues to have no debt on the balance sheet. Turning now to our SaaS or recurring revenue metrics, let me remind you all that almost all our new quotes are subscription based, although there are still a few historical capital deals coming over the line. This focus on SaaS continues to be a key differentiator for Volpara, and one that we continue to see more and more companies in the medical imaging space trying to adopt, but failing basically because they struggle due to their legacy capital sales business structures. During Q4, despite continuing COVID disruption, uncertainty due to the war in Ukraine, and continuing news about cybersecurity breaches in the US, we added over $700K of net new ARR, driven mostly by upsells, which shows the power of the install base that we have, especially as we already have the IT security documentation in place with those customers. The overall number would have been even higher, but for a number of deals at new sites that were delayed due to those extra IT security forms, which we continue to see become even more strict. Now, just as with the change to SaaS, IT security is a particular area where we are strong due to our cloud shift in 2016. That strength is also then becoming a key differentiator for us and a real barrier to entry to new companies coming into this space. We're now at US 22.2 million of annual recurring revenue, which means over the full year, we added US 3.6 million of net new ARR, nearly 40% higher than our previous record, which was FY21. The ARPU across the install base is now running at US $1.51, with deals in the quarter averaging $3.15. But the range of ARPU being from $1 for a single product up to $7.50 for a site who brought Analytics, Patient Hub, Risk, and Transpara. Net churn of SaaS ARR remains low, 3% or less, and we now have our products contracted to help over 35.5% of all US women, which is a fantastic achievement. That means we now have over 1 in 3 women being helped by our software in the US. This provides us with an ever-expanding opportunity to upsell, which we're seeing more and more of, as noted above, and that'll be a key feature again of FY23. In short, Q4 was commercially strong despite the ongoing pandemic, and that's a testament to the sales and marketing team we have under Jill in the US and the momentum they've generated. As a reminder, she's online and happy to take questions at the end. Now let's talk about a few of the kind of more operational highlights for the quarter. As noted in the 4C that went out earlier today, we signed a deal to work with leading Italian X-ray vendor Giotto to supply Volpara Scorecard, which is our density product, to a number of leading Italian sites. That gives us a major footprint in Italy, which ties in well with the Usobi announcement all women in Europe should be told their breast density. Europe screens some 18 million women a year. We're also then working with Fuji Middle East to supply Volpara Scorecard to sites across the region, with the first one being Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi. We're also granting our 99th and 100th patents, cementing again our leadership position in the quantification of breast images. And we remain well on track to hit our revenue guidance for the year of over $25 million, subject to final audit. We're reporting that out as part of our annual report announcement at the end of May. Finally, we just hit the 60 million images mark in the cloud from over 5 million individual women. That is a phenomenal amount of data, especially as it's the key raw X-ray data that comes off the machine, and therefore it's much more quantitative than the images that get stored in packs. You can access a talk I gave about that data on the link in the 4C. This was a major talk that went out onto Art Mini. It received a lot of views, and I think that really indicates the interest people have in that quantitative raw data that Volpara is really unique in storing. We remain convinced that data is the key to the next wave of innovation to come from Volpara for a range of administrative and clinical uses, which we've discussed over the last 9 months or so. Now, before we open the floor to questions, I'd like to introduce Terry a bit more to you. She worked at Epic for 20 years. Reporting directly to the CEO for most of them. She's based in New Zealand, has been working with us for the last 18 months, helping us refine our thinking about electronic health record companies and how Epic grew to be so profitable. So Terry, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Very nice to meet you all virtually. Yes, Epic was a remarkable story of starting small. When I started at Epic, it was half the size of Volpara, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar company, very profitable. And I learned a lot in my time at Epic. A number of those key areas of focus on how to make sure you're maximizing resources and doing more with less are elements that I'm driving into how we're making decisions together with Jill and with Ralph, and how to grow Volpara in a way that will become profitable and strong. So as you see in some of our numbers with 4C and elsewhere, for example, taking advantage of the benefits of COVID and people wanting to be able to connect virtually, driving down some of our sales costs and new customer acquisition costs. Another example area is using the big EHR playbook of looking for the biggest customers and tailored approaches to win larger overall deals. So Jill and I are working closely with the rest of the sales team, accelerating the adoption of risk pathways as an underlying component of a broader EHR deployment. And you'll see more of those pieces coming up in the future. Delightful to work with Volpara.
Cool. Thanks, Terry. It's been great having access to your knowledge and expertise these last 18 months. I'm looking forward to continuing to work closely with you to drive the company towards profitability with growth, and with us launching new ways of innovation to help save more families from cancer. With that, I'd like to open the floor to questions, either to Terry, Jill, Craig, or myself.
Okay, we have a question from Scott Power. Scott, I will allow you to speak. Hopefully this works.
Thanks, Lauren. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Ralph, and congratulations, team. That's a terrific result. Terry, I was just interested in your comments you were just making there about targeting those large customers. So perhaps between yourself and Jill, could you sort of describe now your ideal customer and how you see that customer moving forward with Volpara over the next number of years? And Ralph, just a second question, if I can just sort of get you to perhaps summarize some of the key comments you made in that presentation the other day in terms of the value of that data. I think that's really useful for everyone to understand that. Thanks.
Yep, great question, Scott. And I'll just pick up a little bit on that ideal customer, and then I'll throw it over to Terry and Jill. We've talked a lot over the last year in particular about ideal customers. It's kind of, I think it's common at a stage of us as a SaaS company to really hone down what we do and really focus on those ideal customers, and that helps drive down customer acquisition costs. So that question is music to all our ears, because it's one of the things we've really been talking a lot about internally. So Terry, Jill, do you want to pick up on that?
Why don't I take a few moments, and Jill, you can add some color. So it is nice, we have been talking about the ideal customer, and when you look at the dynamics in the United States about consolidation of healthcare, you've got some monster big integrated delivery networks that have a desire to provide some consistency across all of their locations, even virtually integrated networks. And I think historically, a lot of how we engaged with these customers was on a site-by-site basis. However, the ideal customer for us now is engaging with a large integrated delivery network with multiple hospitals and looking for the opportunities to improve their ability to save lives with all of our components of software. So looking at the entire life cycle, starting with understanding a woman's risk and providing them with an ability to provide a personalized approach that brings more women in their doors, makes them feel known and cared about through the best quality mammogram experience, using all of our software to ensure that they're providing the strongest, best use of our science, all the way through to triaging, even to the point of genetic testing. So we've got customers that can do that across scale. And that's how I see our ideal customer. What would you like to add, Jill?
I think what's interesting is the larger you get, the more you need to be objective and not subjective. So you can't say, you're going to have variation. You're going to have variation in your staff performance. You're going to have variation in how you call breast density. You'll have variation in the pathway. And the more you can standardize and the more you can streamline that workflow, not only does it make it a better clinical outcome for the patient, it makes it better for the staff. Like, everyone knows that's the protocol and that's what they're working towards. And so they're better aligned to deliver it. So I think, while we do bring incredible value to smaller customers, the larger the customer, the bigger the challenge, and the more likely you are to really understand the value that we bring.
Cool. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Terry. So the other question from Scott there was about the data. So I gave a presentation to Morgans and Scott and that some time ago, talking about the data, which I think is available online, which I'd urge you to go and have a look at. But yeah, we've got 60 million. An X-ray machine generates raw X-ray images. Those images are quantitative in their raw format. By the time the image gets to the radiologist to look at for detection of cancer, they've been heavily processed in many, many different ways, and then they become very non-quantitative. So it's critical that we've got that raw quantitative data, and we are extremely excited about the opportunities that brings for AI and deep learning. And the way we're looking at it is in many ways, it's kind of short-term wins, medium-term wins, and long-term wins. So just picking up on the theme there of ideal customers, I mean, all that data flows up into the cloud. If you've only got our breast density tool at the moment, then we can plow through that data. We can spot the sites that have got quality issues and where we might want to go in and sell Volpara Analytics, for example. So it's really going to help us spot ideal customers. Today, or even today, it's helping us improve our algorithms. Our latest release of the algorithm, which was about a year ago now, was built on 20 million images, which is just a phenomenal amount of data. And that really helped us take that algorithm to a new level of robustness. And we did that because, for example, whereas before we'd have 1 or 2 images of a shoulder appearing in the breast image, with the amount of data we have in the cloud now, yeah, we've got 200 or 300 shoulders appearing in breast images. That means we can train algorithms to detect and remove them from our analysis. But then, you know, one of the things that really kind of keeps me getting out of bed in the mornings, think about where we go with that data in the future. And, you know, really breast cancer screening, like a lot of medicines, is becoming much more personalized. And really it's that personalization is being done by risk assessment and so on, as Terry touched on there. But most risk models today are done on 10, 20,000 women. Yeah, we've actually got an opportunity now to do a risk assessment based on, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of women. And that will take it to a whole nother level of accuracy. And it's that kind of accuracy that you need to really make personalization work at the scale needed. Now, as those women go on to personalized care pathways, whether that's increased imaging or so on, there's also going to be preventative strategies like certain drugs like tamoxifen, for example, that they might get offered. And then we're going to enter a whole world of monitoring breast change over time. And that's something which Volpara is going to be uniquely placed to be able to do, because we've got access to the raw data, we've got access to the previous data, and we've got access in the cloud to the computing power that we need to really work out if it's good change or bad change over time. So incredibly exciting kind of future for us in that space. So it's, you know, we've talked about this before, you know, we're moving to a world of predict, monitoring, detect, and empowering women. And yeah, that data really gives us the ability to do all of those things, very uniquely in the world, and all backed up, of course, by those patents, which we've just announced our 100th one.
Great. Thanks, Ralph. If I'm able to ask one more question, I might just flip across to Craig. Craig, what was noted that you had a very strong quarter, but there were a couple of things that perhaps are flowing into the next quarter. So I'm just wondering if you could perhaps give a little bit more color around that, and just notice the range between $1 and $7.50. Again, just perhaps some color around that in terms of, was the $1 a higher volume client, or were they just buying single products? And obviously the $7.50 is getting very much closer to the $10 ARPU that we talk about. So, I mean, how much more do we need to do to sort of get towards that client that buys the $10 or has an ARPU of $10? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I might answer that first one and then hand it over to Jill, so she can give a bit more color on the deals that pushed. But we certainly had a number of deals in the pipeline. This was a bit of a strange quarter, I would say. But you know, for example, one large customer or potential customer, IT security was the reason why it pushed. it's not a lost customer, it's purely in Q1 as opposed to Q4. And sometimes that's how these quarters roll. Q2 is traditionally our light quarter, yet Q2 for us this year was by far our largest quarter. So sometimes the quarters don't necessarily go according to plan, but nevertheless, I think $700,000 US ARR is still very good performance. Joel, do you want to add a bit more color on maybe one or two of those deals and what Q1 maybe looks like?
I think the question was around like the $1 ARPU or the $1 per patient piece of it. And that's really just when they buy one product. And there were a couple of those this quarter, or actually this quarter was more people adding on to existing install base. So in my opinion, that's kind of like our superpower is we typically do like 60% of break in new customers. That's what we've done historically the last couple of years. And this quarter, we didn't do that, but we sold it up in our own install base. And so people that buy Volpara products, in my mind, to kind of become a candidate for more Volpara products because we do a great job of delivering our product suite and training the customers on how to use them, and they're very relevant in the marketplace. So people, it's why I joined. I mean, I've known Volpara for 10 years and I came running over here because of what we're doing. So I think it's a really credible group of people that work with our customers. So I think this quarter we sold a lot into our install base, but when you look at that range of price point, I think that was Scott. We really do sell one product to a customer, and then some customers we sell 5 or 4 products to them. So that's just the range of the suite. And getting to the $10, I think what we really see ourselves being able to do is also layering in professional services, helping them achieve what they want to achieve with our solutions, because right now people are short-staffed and they need the easy button. They want somebody to come in and say, oh yeah, I built a genetic high-risk program. Let me show you how to do it. Oh yeah, I've layered in genetic labs. We do all the ordering and the radiologists don't do one extra clicks. Can you show me how to do that? And I think that will become one of our solutions. And I think adding in genetic testing will be another one of our solutions. So I think we'll keep growing.
Cool. Thanks, Jill.
That's all from me. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. There's been a question come through just while we're talking about customers and say ideal partners. And Terry, this might be another one for you, noting your strong relationships with Fuji and GE. So there's a question around, can you please describe Volpara's ideal partners, such as GE, and of course, how their relationships are developing?
Yeah, the relationships are developing well. We've got a couple meetings scheduled next month with Cerner and Epic, including sitting down with Epic CEO. It's fascinating when you look at these big vendors out there that are taking care of patients broadly, like electronic medical record vendors or Fuji that are doing, all radiology. They don't have the capability to develop that deep vertical expertise that we have to be able to really tackle personalized breast care. And so the ideal relationship to me is one in which we help them win better with what they do. So we have that knowledge, we have that focus, and by integrating ourselves into their workflows, they can make their radiologists, their mammographers, and their patients a lot happier by having us underneath the covers. So, even the approach with Epic and talking with my former colleagues over there, areas that are a source of frustration to some of their customers, Epic's never going to be able to take on the depth of knowledge of breast that we have. So for us, being an integrated part of their workflow, that somebody can sign an Epic contract and just chuck us in at the checkout counter, that's the ideal relationship, and that's what we're working towards. Did that make sense to the anonymous?
Thank you. I hope that answered the question. If you need a little bit more detail, feel free to pop that back in the chat. We also have a question from Andrew Baskand. I will allow you to speak, Andrew.
It's actually Kevin Bennett here. Congratulations, Ralph. Good result. Just can we have a little bit of colour about Q1, or I suppose this year, the cash burn? Clearly, you expect volumes to pick up as the US economy opens up, but what's going to happen on the cost side? What's your sort of profile you're looking at?
Yeah, it's a good question, Kevin. And obviously, we are living in a strange world. I'll ask Craig to come in, but yeah, as a company, right, we're very focused towards moving towards profitability, and we're very focused on keeping those costs contained whilst still getting the growth. So yeah, that's our general outlook. We are going through the budgeting process now with the board. It's progressing, and we're about to get sign off. But yeah, the general gist is heading towards profitability, and while still getting that good growth. Craig, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, Kevin. One, I think we're in a fortunate position where, fortunate or unfortunate, but I think in our case, fortunate in that our revenue lags our ARR, and that's a common theme in this industry because it takes a while to get installed. So our revenue will continue to grow. And what we have seen this year, particularly, and it's been very strong, is our cash flow has not suffered at all in terms of cash inflows. This was by far our strongest year for cash inflow, nearly 50% up on last year. And yes, some of that was CRA, but there was a lot of organic growth in there as well. So our cash inflow will continue to be strong. On the cost side, I think everyone on this call will understand that inflation is running rampant at the moment. A lot of our employee base is in New Zealand and the rest in the US, and there are a lot of pressures on staffing in both countries, especially in the IT or engineering space. So, our focus is on keeping our employees, rewarding them appropriately, but also at the same time, finding where we can find some cost savings, synergies, etc. And I think we've done a very, very good job over the last couple of years in really focusing on the costs that we can control to a large extent, like Microsoft, for example. We've done a lot of multi-tenanting and a lot of other back-end work that has saved us significant amounts of money and will do for the future. We've got a new release coming out soon, which will even further improve that. So I think there's multiple different answers to that question, but I think overall we are very focused on, prudently managing our cash, as well as continuing to really drive, cash inflows. And our goal, obviously, over time is to continue to see a reduction in our net cash outflow. Over the last 12 months, we have seen that reduce over time. We had a couple of peaky months or quarters, but overall, it's been a material reduction on FY20 and 21, and I think FY23, the goal is the same, to continue to see that dropping. And currently we still have $18 million cash in the bank, so I think we're in a decent position right now.
Right. And just one more, if I can, for Ralph, what's the biggest bottleneck to your growth at the moment? What would you sort of cite as your major restricting factor?
That's a good question, Kevin, and I'll let Jill perhaps come in on that. But certainly, one thing, we've got an outstanding sales team over there, but we are seeing, like we talked about, staff shortages and IT security forms and so on, which really are pushing out growth. But if we can get kind of and I actually believe all those things like IT security, it's going to be a key differentiator for us in the future, and it really is going to be a barrier to entry to new new companies coming in. So it's going to play out positively in the medium term. But yeah, those staff shortages, the IT security forms, but then launching a new kind of around the back, launching that new wave of innovation. We've talked around the data spotting those ideal customers, getting more focus and priority. Yeah, that they are all going to help really fuel growth and drive us through some of the questions that we get.
Can I add something on that?
Sure.
I think, we've got a really solid sales team. Jill's doing a fantastic job orienting the entire team on cross-selling and upselling and leveraging who we have, getting stability across who's in charge of which region. So I think we're poised to really take off and do well in that area next year. But we have to step back and still recognize that as a company, we really are still three companies coming together. So we acquired MRS a few years ago, we acquired CRA. And so we've got a little bit of work to continue to do to pull those companies together, make sure that we've got the foundation in place for consistent customer engagement processes, customer success development. And as Jill mentioned earlier, customers want the easy button. They want the ability for us to take them by the hand and lead them to successful outcomes. And that's a big area of focus for us. Once we have this really strong and in place, delivered in a SaaS sort of way, we'll really be poised for growth.
Thank you.
Thank you. So a couple of questions have come through in the Q&A as well. So just off the back of the operating and investing cash flow, there's a question here from Claude Walker. So we'll stay on theme and I'll work through these. So question, I suspect predominantly for you, Craig, is operating and investing cash outflow decreased between Q3 and Q4 last year before increasing again in Q1 and Q2 of this year. Are you expecting another increase in cash burn either in the next quarter or the one after that? And when can Volpara commit to consistent reduction rather than fluctuation?
Cool. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Claude. So Q1 is generally our most expensive quarter or our most cash outflows for various reasons, but we do have larger costs in Q1. We generally also have larger cash inflows in Q1 as well. I think one of the difficulties and one of the complexities of operating in the US specifically, and one that's particularly pertinent to our business is, we have 750 customers. So, that's not a small amount of customers. And, 80 to 85% of our US customers pay us by check. Okay. And the difference between a very good quarter and a not so good quarter could be the difference of one day in terms of how long it took the mailman to get the check to the post office. And, I don't say that, sarcastically. I think, it is quite important to understand that nuance that we are dealing with. For example, at the end of Q4, we had a large check come in on the last day of the year. That could have easily come in on the first day of the year. So at our level of cash burn, that can also be the difference between, average cash burn for the quarter or extremely good or extremely bad. So I think that is one nuance to just take into account. However, having said that, I think the overall theme of the business is one of consistent overall over the course of a year. If we look at a year overall, those differences iron out quarter on quarter. And what we are focusing on is a continued annual decrease in our overall cash burn. And that is the plan for FY23, and the plan for FY24 and onwards is to continue to decrease that on a consistent basis. But I do urge you to look at our cash burn over a year, not quarter on quarter, for those nuances that I've referred to earlier. Hopefully that answers your question, Claude. Happy to take emails from you as well if that helps.
Thanks, Craig. A question then around headcount and current sales efficiency amongst the sales team. How do you prepare to grow the sales team and drive sales efficiency further up?
I'll let Terry and Jill come in on that one, Lauren. But I will just note that Jill's been on board for a year now. It's been fantastic to have her on board for a year. And one of the things Craig and I recognised as soon as she came on was how particular she is in recruiting sales staff. You have to be extremely good to work for Volpara, and but equally, one of the things Craig and I have also learned over the last few years is that whenever a salesperson comes on, it always takes them 6 or 9 months to generally get up to speed, and so that those outstanding new people that did join last year to bring the team up to full speed, or to full numbers, are now on that way to full productivity, albeit speeding that up is always a good move. Jill, do you want to talk to that one?
Sure, I agree. We've hired great people and we had an amazing foundation, so I don't want to diminish that at all. I think it's a good question. So when you think about our sales deployment, it's really we have two different organizations touching our customer. One is the sales directors and the sales team that support them, and they're designed to really grow and expand, sell to new customers. And like we talked about earlier, we're looking into some of those large IDNs. Likewise, we have a customer success team that works with our installed base. And so many of our installed base customers, I think it's something like 15% have everything that we sell, but there's another 85% that only have 1 or 2 of our products. So we really have an opportunity to grow in both places. And so we're working to ensure this group is really successful and wants to look at how they can layer in additional functionality. And this group is introducing customers to the influence and what we can bring in terms of value. So I really think about it as both sides of that equation. And if you look at that, we're just at the same size we were before COVID, but focused in different areas. So I think that's going to be the key to our success long-term, is making sure everybody that uses us wants to add functionality in the groups that we haven't really been introduced to Volpara yet, that we can create new opportunities with them. And this year, we took this solution set. Again, Terry mentioned we have just brought in the risk pathways team, CRA. We've just brought in the MRS team. We went to ASBS, NCBC, RSNA, and we're really seeing that every different group we touch, from surgeons to oncology and cancer solutions to radiology, each one of these groups, this message resonates with them. So we're seeing a lot of engagement across all the different clinical teams that we touch.
I see Jill also really leading the sales team to be more strategic, from more of a product-oriented sale to more of a solution with multiple products in it, which will also drive up our ARPU. So we're using the same size of a team, but using them more strategically in how they engage with the market, aligned with the connectivity between our products that continues to grow over time and provide more value.
Thank you. Thanks for that. This is probably another one for you, Jill and Terry, and it is around customer conversion and cybersecurity, and what Volpara might need to do from a cybersecurity perspective to get customers across the line, or whether it's more at the customer's end that they would need to improve their own cybersecurity infrastructure.
I think what's limiting us today, so first of all, this is a strength for us. I mean, we're just in the past quarter, 4 different customers have told us our responses to their cybersecurity questionnaires are best in class. Like, really, we do a great job with this. I think what is slowing us down is first, the IT teams are strapped for time. So they have to do the rigor every time, and we want them to do that rigor, but it just takes a little bit longer. I think the second thing is that we are seeing some requests for different and unique solutions like CrowdStrike and things like that. And so we're flexible and we're working through those types of requests to make sure that we meet the customer needs. So I think in the end, it's always a positive. And I believe we really bring a unique set of tools here, and our team is fabulous in this area. So I don't know if Terry, any comments on that?
I think that about covered it. I think our team is good. We've built some redundancy, but largely it's on the customer's end, unfortunately.
Just to build on that slightly, what is your customer retention?
Craig, do you want to speak to the percent, the numbers?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Thanks, Lauren. Overall, our churn rate is about 3%. We have different, obviously, there are multiple different products along that line that we track, and we track them by product. So some are close to no churn, and some are slightly more, but on average, about 3% per annum is our churn rate, which for an enterprise-size business or enterprise deals, that is a good churn rate.
Thank you. Now this is an interesting question. So it's from Philip Rechtman. Do you have a 25-year plan, and is there any plan to say look at buying other help companies so that in the next 25 years you could be, or Volpara could be, the next CSL?
That's a great question. I'm not sure, Craig, if we've got forecasts out 25 years, but certainly, one of our mantras internally, right, is, and you've heard us talk a lot more about profitability and so on, is we want to be strong and independent. There's a huge amount of innovation that we want to bring out, and we really believe we've got a lot of really unique AI and really unique ways of helping women around the world. So certainly, we've kind of got a long-term vision on that, and we see strong and independent being the key way of keeping innovation flowing out there to help people. Obviously, we're very focused on breast. We talked last year about lung. When we get breast kind of nailed down completely, obviously there's lung, and there's a whole range of other kind of screening workflows after that, where the benefits of good patient tracking along with AI and with the unique kind of insights that Volpara brings, will show us whole new areas to grow into. So we're very focused, strong and independent, and being very innovative. We would love to be the next CSL, but I'm not sure yet we're ready to give a 25-year forecast, but I'll talk to Craig about it afterwards.
It's always good to dream big. Speaking of, and a tone shift into the US legislation, and wanting to get an understanding of how that impacts Volpara and whether we will see any direct impact soon.
Yeah, it's a great question, and as per the 4C, there's a couple other things. There's just a huge amount of tailwinds in general around what we do at the moment. Lots of American organizations coming out and saying we should be doing risk assessment, we should be doing genetics on all women in particular. So just to remember that those tailwinds have been building for the last few years, and then you also have Biden coming out in February this year talking about the cancer moonshot and reiterating their desire to halve cancer deaths over the next decade or so. And the way that they foresee doing that is by predicting who's going to get breast cancer, who's going to get cancer in general much better. Again, that's a huge tailwind to us, and they talk about breast density and risk assessment and the need for really good IT solutions. So again, a lot of kind of tailwinds already in the US, and then we have EUSOBI, which is the European Society of Breast Imaging, coming out saying that all women in Europe should be told their breast density and should be offered breast MRI every 2 or 4 years if they're extremely dense. So Yeah, we've not talked a lot about Europe, but we do see these tailwinds now starting to develop in Europe. And then coming back to the US, obviously, we are watching intently for signs of the FDA coming out with a standardized law around density reporting and wording. We've not heard anything about that now for the last few months, but we've heard no indication as well that it's not being worked on. And certainly some of the patient advocacy groups like Dense Breast Info and so on are doing a huge amount of lobbying at the moment of the FDA to try and get them to do what they started looking at 2 or 3 years ago and start to pull that law out. But key thing is that law will be important to us, but there's a lot of other tailwinds already going on globally, which are really playing into what we do.
Thank you. And then in Australia, the recent federal government's budget ahead of the election has included a financial commitment to improving women's cancer screening services. What does that mean for Volpara in Australia?
Yeah, good question, Lauren. So there's lots of interesting things going on in Australia. We got some more private imaging sales during Q4, which is good to see. Obviously, we also went live in Queensland with our Volpara Analytics project, and in South Australia, we have the density pilot continuing. So a lot of activity in Australia at private and public screening levels. We have been through that budget, and there is a certain financial commitment in there to help, in particular, catch up screening post-COVID. So obviously, during COVID, there was a couple of months where women weren't screened, and that ended up resulting in lots of late-stage cancers coming through, very sadly. So there's been a commitment now by the federal government in Australia to do catch up and so on. But there was also a renewed emphasis on breast MRI in there for high-risk women, which obviously plays into Volpara's role, in particular in the US, where we are the tool of choice for measuring density. That density then flows into a risk model, and those risk models tell the US people who to go and get or who to offer breast MRI to. So there certainly is positive benefit from that budget for us. But we are yet to see where it actually plays out in clinical reality, but looks positive at this stage.
Thanks, Ralph. Craig, I have a follow-up question for you from Claude. Claude, I'll allow you to speak if you'd like to ask your follow-up directly.
Sure. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can.
Oh yeah, look, I was just wondering, like, I just want to clarify, I understood from your previous answer that, yes, there is a possibility essentially that Q1 and Q2 will once again see a bit of an increase in cash burn. I just want to check if that's correct understanding. And then secondly, I remember, I think it was in Q2 last year, there was a big insurance payment that impacted cash burn then. Is that going to repeat in Q2 this year?
Yeah, so I think the important thing, Claude, and maybe I wasn't necessarily as clear earlier, our costs are relatively consistent quarter on quarter as they have been in the prior year. And our costs are predictable. To a large degree, we know when our cash outflows are going to go out. What is uncertain is our cash inflows. So we know we're going to have good cash inflow and it's going to go up, but I think that important thing is we could have one very large check on the day before the year end or the day after. And I think the other important thing to note is, when I mentioned earlier, we have 750 odd customers. I think one of the benefits to Volpara is that, we don't have any sort of customer concentration risk. One customer leaves us, it's not the end of the world. But equally, we don't necessarily have one customer who's going to pay us $1 million at this point, hopefully in the future. But, for example, the check I mentioned earlier, $280,000, that's a material-ish amount for us at this point. So one or two of those checks in the quarter, and all of a sudden Q1 and Q2 don't necessarily have an increase in cash burn, but equally, if we don't get those and they push into Q2 or Q3 or Q4, then maybe we have a slight increase. So our cash burn is going to be lumpy over a full year. But like I mentioned, if you look at a 12-month period, the overall reduction should be to the positive side.
All right, cool. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying.
Cool. But yes, the insurance payment is a Q2 expense, and that will be relevant in Q2 again this year.
Cool. Thanks, Craig.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. So that's all the questions that we have currently. If anyone else would like to ask a question, please pop it into the Q&A panel. Otherwise, if there are no more questions, I'll hand over to Ralph for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Lauren. Look, thanks again for your time today. As you can tell, we're a remarkably resilient business helping millions of women each year. Thank you for your continued belief in our mission to save families from cancer, and we look forward to presenting our full year results at the end of May. So thank you all.
Thank you.